Inside this episode,
cyber is essentially malice in the form of somebody doing something to my information technology system that I don't want them to do.
We might help ourselves by learning to operate in an environment in which we can trust very little of the technology that we're using.
There is a desperate need for people who understand and can conduct cyber operations.
in a very short amount of time, the internet and the ever-expanding realm of cyberspace have allowed for increased collaboration between individuals and nations. In that same amount of time, the virtual world has become very real terrain for terrorism and cyber warfare.
Destructive attacks on the world's computer networks are increasing, and the U.S. needs to act quickly to address the cyber threat.
Dealing with those threats will require changing to meet the enemy's evolving abilities and techniques.
The commander of U.S. Cyber Command told Congress today that cyber threats are impacting the U.S. and its allies daily and costing billions of dollars.
General Martin Dempsey is calling the cyber domain a level playing field with no U.S. advantage when it comes to defending against a cyber attack.
Events in cyberspace continue to accelerate as both nation-states and non-state actors seek to exploit asymmetrical advantages in the virtual domain.
In the past just couple years, we've seen the number of actors, the number of attacks, the range of attacks, the range of operations expand rather significantly.
The challenges here are so broad that the idea that one sector or one individual organization is going to solve this, I just don't think is realistic. It is going to take a true partnership between the private sector, the government, and academia to address the challenges we have.
The learning curve for combat and defense rises with each new offensive.
Our adversaries are getting more sophisticated and more determined and more plentiful. So every day we've got to keep upping our game at the same time. We've got to stay ahead of those who are trying to do us harm.
According to experts, many small-scale attacks can be and are being prevented, but a major mass disruptive attack is a growing possibility, against which current defenses are inadequate.
Admiral Michael Rogers, Director of NSA and Commander of U.S. Cyber Command, visited NPS. He wanted to spur interest and draw upon expertise in what has increasingly become a primary front in the war of not just ideas, but of network terrain and critical infrastructure. Admiral Rogers spoke with Defense Analysis Chair John Arquilla.
Admiral Rogers, thanks so much for coming to visit us here in Monterey. You were great with the students today and raised a number of really important themes. Perhaps the most important one is your point about the rising requirements in the cyber arena, the rising threats, and the restricted resources. What I'd like to know from you is where you see NPS, the Naval Postgraduate School, in helping you to confront this dilemma.
So the value that Naval Postgraduate School provides me as Commander of the United States Cyber Command is you are helping to build the workforce of the future by educating the men and women here at Monterey who in turn, as they leave Monterey, will go on to be part of the cyber mission force, leading some of those cyber teams we're creating, helping us deal with policy and other issues, being leaders and staff officers in the field for us. You are helping to develop the intellectual capital of the future. Because cyber, like every other area, has an underpinning of operational concepts, strategic thought. That's an area that we need to be spending more time on. And postgraduate school here in Monterey is so well positioned to help us do that. You've got great technical capability here. So how do we maximize that? Are there projects, research that both the students and faculty could be doing that pay off in the long run? So I'm very high on the value of Naval Postgraduate School, which is one reason why I am out here in Monterey.
I also loved your use of history and analogy to think about this time. Cyber is a very new domain, and yet you've been able to find the parallels with earlier eras, not least the period before World War II, where we faced a number of design challenges, were attacked by surprise. The 9/11 of that era was Pearl Harbor, and yet responded swiftly, skillfully, and decisively. Would you say a few words about how that design challenge was mastered and how we might face this one?
So I try to remind people, look, the mismatch between requirements and resources is not something new. And if you go back in the 20s and 30s, we had a Navy at the time where money was so tight, we generally were focused on one single exercise as the ultimate fleet maneuver, if you will. We were not forward deployed in the same way. We had people on China Station, elsewhere around the world, but it wasn't the same model. And even though money was tight, we came to the conclusion that some of the ways to compensate is to spend a lot of time on intellectual and operational development. How do we think about the concepts that we're going to need in the future as we generate more resources over time? And so almost everything that we took for granted in the Second World War in the Western Pacific, we actually did the foundational work back in the 30s. Cyber is much the same way to me. We're in an environment now where threat and risk is accelerating rapidly. You see that in Sony, you see that every day in the major intrusions we're dealing with, both within the broad U.S. economy as well as against the Department of Defense. Even as threats rising, resources potentially decreasing, clearly a mismatch between what we think are requirements and what we think are resource levels the department needs. Not unique to cyber, we're dealing now at a department right now. So the power of intellect, the power of thought becomes an incredible hedge and a real force equalizer for us. I try to remind people, as technically focused as cyber is, don't ever forget that in the end, it is the intellect and the heart of the men and women in the mission set. That's our edge. That's what's going to get us success, not just the technology.
I think that's such an important point, especially for us at the Naval Postgraduate School, where we have a great deal of technical expertise, but also we're very much invested in thinking through issues of strategy and policy. And another of the analogies you talked about was nuclear strategy, and a lot of the ideas about that, about deterrence, came from the academy, from civilian universities and think tanks. Is there a similar role for military education and indeed for civilian universities to help develop cyber strategy, policy, doctrine?
I mean, I definitely think there is. It's one of the reasons, again, why I'm out in Monterey. Every time I'm in the Valley, for example, I spend time at Stanford, over at Berkeley, because I'm trying to argue, again, the academic world can bring some very rich intellectual thought. And just as we did in the nuclear arena, where much of our initial underpinning for those initial concepts of mutually assured destruction and the deterrent concepts that we take for granted today, in the 40s and the 50s, as we were trying to figure out, so what are we going to do with these things? The academic world really helped drive the pursuit of thought. What does deterrence mean in a nuclear framework? How do you control escalation? Much of that work, I think, is very analogous to the environment we find ourselves in now, and so I'm really high on the academic world and its capabilities to help us with the intellectual thought piece.
Admiral, you mentioned Silicon Valley and Stanford. They're about 90 minutes away from us here. Are you thinking about what kind of footprint you and the command will have in that area? And isn't it its own kind of design challenge to think through how on the defense side we integrate with universities and commercial enterprises to try to think through the security issues in cyberspace?
So we are. I have come to the conclusion that the Valley and its broader extensions, if you will, are a center of gravity within this mission set, that we need to be able to partner and partner with, as well as access much of the technology and the intellectual thought that is really churning in the mission set out here in California. And so one of the things that we've looked at, we've created an initial, we call it a point of presence, an initial reserve structure on the ground over in Silicon Valley. I'll start relatively small, we'll build it out over time. There's some things we're trying to do in terms of investment.
You also talked about the workforce in general, Admiral, and I think it would be very important for our students and our audience to hear your thoughts about the types of human capital you want to develop to fill out the cyber force in the future.
So, as much as in this mission set, we tend to focus on the technology, I always try to remind people, look, our greatest edge is the men and women who actually execute the mission. Cyber's no different in that regard. And so what we need is a broad set of human capital with a spectrum of capability from the very technical to the planning to the intelligence enablers, for example, that help us understand and characterize this battle space against cyber no different. That it's much more than just get me a whole bunch of computer science graduates. Not that that's not an important component of the structure, but we have got to think more broadly. So if you look at the spectrum of disciplines resident out here at the Naval Postgraduate School, one of the things I talk to the team as we're building that force for the future is, hey, I'm interested in accessing a whole wider swath than just computer scientists, for example. Not that computer scientists aren't of great value to us, but I want operations analysis, operations research. You got mathematicians. What kind of double E backgrounds do you have? What kind of intelligence, what kind of planning expertise can we gain access to? We need all of that.
The Cyber Academic Group was formed to provide a multidisciplinary consortium of faculty and staff to support the academic and research programs in cyber here at the Naval Postgraduate School. The internet has expanded dramatically over the past several years, 20 years or so, so that everyone is connected. Everyone has computers now. In fact, many people have multiple computers. They'll have tablets, mobile devices, phones, PCs at home, and now we're entering what is called the Internet of Things, in which various smaller devices such as your thermos or your refrigerator may have a computer in it. Cyber warfare and cyber operations involve having effects on a target computer, and those effects are generally part of a larger mission, so the effect might not be a cyber effect. That is the objective of the mission. The mission may have a kinetic objective, but the cyber operations can support that kinetic objective. And then in other cases, the cyber operation may in fact have a purely cyber effect, that you want to somehow modify or corrupt or obtain the information of the target adversary. The Cyber Academic Group manages 2 degree programs. One is the Cyber Systems and Operations Master's degree, which is a program for officers, and the MACO degree, which is a Master of Science in Applied Cyber Operations. And that is for enlisted personnel, senior enlisted personnel.
CSO tends to take officers who have worked in the field in a supervisory capacity and allow them to get a little more deep into exactly what cyber operations is. And then the MACO program takes those professionals who have worked in the field and provide them a bit more of a policy and operations focus as opposed to maybe what they've done in a very hands-on technical level previously. Our first MACO cohort actually was a group of 4 students, 3 chiefs and a senior petty officer, who came here to really be the vanguard for what we hope to be a much larger program ultimately. And all 4 of them have gone on to great success in the follow-on jobs they had. We've heard great responses from their receiving commands. For our CSO students, we've had 7 classes now. And actually this most recent class is our largest class yet. So we've got Marine students, some Marine senior enlisted actually, very senior enlisted, and some Army students. So we're obviously starting to gain some traction, and we've really been very happy with the quality of the people we're getting so far.
Right now we are in the unclassified segment of the Naval Postgraduate School Cyber Battle Lab. The Naval Postgraduate School has made a large investment in the Cyber Battle Lab, not only in terms of the purchase of the equipment required for both the classified and unclassified segments, but furthermore, we have expanded our classified facility to contain the Cyber Battle Lab and classrooms, and we have created a new lab facility here in the unclassified area so that the students can use the lab for such classes as cyber wargaming classes, in which one class of students will be the Red Force and another class of students are the Defenders or the Blue Force. And it's a great learning experience for the students to have this kind of hands-on laboratory to test out various cyber activities. This quarter we're supporting 3 classes, one in the Defense Analysis Department, one in the Cyber Systems and Operations program, and another in Computer Science. When used in toto, the lab can support about 100 virtual machines, which can give you a pretty powerful number crunching facility or an ability to build simulated networks for small-scale experimentation.
We're really positioning ourselves to be the premier capability to educate on all levels of that enterprise, not just operations, but also engineering and computationally. And all the forces, so not just Navy, but Air Force. We'd like to bring them into the fold as well. Army has already taken a good step in, and the Marines have started taking a good step in as well.
Cyber operations actually affects many, many departments here on campus. The Math Department, Electrical Engineering Department, Defense Analysis Department, Information System Sciences, Computer Science, Operations Research, and we have a special synergy with space systems operations because they depend upon cyber to operate and we depend upon them to communicate. You can have people working at a hardware level, higher up, what we call the software stack, working on the infrastructure and the effects that might be established and building the software for those. And then the cyber operations students who really have to understand the impact of those effects and how they fit into a mission and how they're used. And so the cyber operations students really need to have an understanding of all of these aspects. And there is a lot of sharing of courses so that the students who emerge are able to have an impact when they go on to their next commands.
So we're fortunate at NPS to have the Center for Cyber Warfare here. And as the director of the center, it's my job to engage faculty and students in working on problems that have real DoD relevance to protection of information and infrastructure in cyberspace. And because it's the study of warfare, how we as a military and as a nation might attack or dislodge things that matter to other people that are stored in cyberspace. Cyberspace and the things that we value physically are stored all over the globe, and we conduct worldwide operations as a Navy. And so we need a way to quickly come into a theater, and the way we can identify and create a target set for things in the physical world, we need the expertise and the understanding of what the infrastructure looks like in cyberspace in order to be able to provide an operational commander with a target set for cyber effects so he can make operational trade-offs of what might be the best way to achieve his military objective.
The bulk of cyber, we're talking enterprise cyber, really is scripted. It's all about getting it done before your adversary does. I need to have it programmed in. The intelligence needs to be in my system to make the decisions before my adversary can act. Okay, because once the cyber war happens, we're only going to be able to stand back and watch. Okay, it's all going to be scripted. It's going to be over before we even know what happened. So we need to have our ducks in a line before it even starts, and that's why engineering, computer science are so important in this, because those are the guys that are going to implement that future cyber war before it happens. The great thing about our students is they're passionate about what they do, and they come here with an idea, and they grab on it and they drive it to a solution. And Tom has certainly done that. He really views the network as a control system, as an OODA loop, if you want. Observe, orient, decide, and act. And he is saying, how am I going to observe and orient my approach to the network so I can make a decision and act upon, say, somebody attacking my network? And I think he's done an absolute wonderful job.
By applying control at specific points, I can reduce problems elsewhere.
Yeah, kind of break it apart into components and things like that.
I'm working on an idea that you can find out the health and status of the network and quickly identify hotspots of congestion, hotspots that are being attacked. And the real goal of all of that is to automate the process. We can't have a system administrator in the loop trying to figure out, has the attack started, where are they attacking, what is happening? I need the network to defend itself. The idea of software-defined networking and being able to centralize some of the control of the network is what's allowing us to automate some of these processes. I'm going to 10th Fleet to work on research and development problems. That's a really exciting thing for me. EDOs don't get to go to 10th Fleet very often. I'm bringing my acquisition experience, I'm bringing my shipboard experience, my understanding of NAVC and SPAWAR to 10th Fleet to help integrate my background as an EDO into the background of an information warfare officer. I think combining those two can be really powerful in a research and development mode. Being a PhD and having to do research on my own is really helpful, because I understand what it takes to come up with a new idea, push it through, and actually demonstrate it. That's really helpful when you go back to a larger R&D office.
Here in the CCW, we're very proud that our graduates that have worked on problems and research topics through the CCW have ascended to high levels of command and cyber preparation, as well as working to train the next generation of cyber warriors. Many of our graduates are going back to the U.S. Naval Academy to teach the cybersecurity courses and cyber operations courses that are being stood up there, whereas on the other end of the spectrum, we're very proud that Vice Admiral Jan Tai, the commander of the Navy's 10th Fleet and Navy Cybercom, is a graduate of the EC department. So we're able to bring projects on board the campus, allow students to have a tangible impact on the technology and the operational ideas of how to defend and attack cyberspace, and then take that knowledge out with them to the broader Navy to serve us as we move into a new domain.
Places like Stanford, MIT, that are trying out these crazy innovative approaches, because that's really what research needs, is some kind of really unusual type of approach to these things. We want to do transformational research, and what NPS brings is the fact that we know what's out there right now, so we can compare what we do right now with the crazy stuff that Stanford and MIT and Illinois are doing.
Cyberspace is truly an interdisciplinary problem here on campus. There's an engineering approach that deals with the infrastructure that exists to make cyberspace, but the applications that are more tied to computer science that function on top of that infrastructure allow us to collaborate across lines of demarcation on campus. Additionally, when we think about strategy and policy and what might be an operational target in cyberspace, our partners in defense analysis, international graduate studies, this center allows us to bring people from across campus together to come up with interdisciplinary solutions. Looking forward, it's important for the center to take the insight that we've gained in a decade of study at the national level to find ways to put tools in the toolkit at the operational level for Navy forces going forward, so that we can provide the CEO of a ship, the Commodore of a squadron, and the battle group commander with real tools that affect the situation at sea and on the ground where they might find themselves needing to employ cyber effects to achieve their military objectives.
Current network security systems require human programmers to identify and repair weaknesses, usually after an attack. But what if these security systems were fully automated? To answer these questions, DARPA launched the Cyber Grand Challenge, the first computer security tournament designed to test intelligent machines.
The Cyber Grand Challenge hopes to prevent these attacks by improving our ability to patch software in near real time.
The challenge plans to follow a capture the flag format often employed by experts to test their cyber defense skills.
What we might say full spectrum capture the flag exercises, in which the participants are expected to not only carry out offensive related tasks, but defend their own systems as well. And this generally involves analyzing software for security vulnerabilities, understanding how to patch that software to harden your defenses against your competitors, and understanding how to leverage the knowledge you have about the flaws in those softwares to demonstrate that your competitors continue to field flawed software.
The best of the best go head-to-head in a final tournament at the holiest of sites for cyber warriors, DEF CON Conference in Las Vegas. The winning team receives a cash prize of $2 million. Second place earns $1 million, and third place $750,000.
My role in the Cyber Grand Challenge is to participate in the team that is architecting the competition infrastructure. So I like to give an analogy to some other DARPA programs that have gone on. They've done autonomous vehicle challenges, they've done some robotics challenges. In the autonomous vehicle challenges, corporations, competitors were invited to build vehicles with enough sensors to allow them to navigate a track with the intent of measuring the capabilities of the vehicles. If we apply that to the Cyber Grand Challenge, then my role is to help architect that track in a cyber sense, on which we will evaluate the systems that have been developed by the competitors, in part through my knowledge and understanding of capture the flag competitions. I am attempting to build a measurement framework whereby we will feel confident that we can decide which competitors put forth the best technology and most closely meets the goals of the Cyber Grand Challenge program as put forth by DARPA. As cyber becomes more readily accessible throughout the world and more people are becoming as connected as we are, we're going to see more people gaining these skills, more people understanding perhaps the power that such attacks can bring them. The outcome of these attacks can be as noisy or as quiet as the group chooses to allow them to be. We might help ourselves by learning to operate in an environment in which we can trust very little of the technology that we're using. And if we learn to operate under the assumption that everything that we're using is already compromised, and what kind of personal security practices we can employ in such environments, then we may start to see a shift to a time when the impact of such attacks is lessened dramatically, because the people against which they're prosecuting the attacks are better prepared to deal with them.
We thank you for watching. Until next time.